maybe you could make
Hey,
like
John.
100 business cards, and that way you
John.
can just hand them out to people. Just say, hey, go to my website and under podcasts, and that's where you can connect.
John,
Mhm.
John, we're
I
live.
think it looks pretty good. Emily?
We're live, John.
Okay, I'm gonna hit live. Are you ready, Rhonda?
Sure.
Okay, here, give me a second. Hello, everyone. Today is September 11th, 2023. Welcome to JAWS Christ Talk. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Christ Talk on September 11th, 2023. Today we have Rhonda Brown with us. Rhonda is a Christian poet. I want to give a special thanks to NDTV, Transform You Media, Zach with PAC Channel, and Jay Stoyan with Disability Channel for hosting our shows. Be sure to share and subscribe to our page or wherever you found us. Now let's get to the show. Just so people know, we have a live version that comes into YouTube, but it's also pre-recorded. And if you go to our website at JAWS Coffee Chat, it have a list of all the different podcasts we have. Rhonda also has a list on her website. And below her name, you can see she is called the Poet Monk. And that's where you can go to her website. And then the podcasts are listed there. They're also listed under my website, twomeasuresfoolish.org, which is an Christian apologetic website. So I list a whole bunch there. Oh, Rhonda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, John. Glad to be with you.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we had this idea the last time we were in here, is a lot of Rhonda's poems almost read like a prayer. And we were talking about that, how that would work, and could you use it as an actual prayer and all those things. We actually did a blog on her website. It's praying a poem back to God. And I thought it would be a really cool thing because a lot of her poems really read like a prayer. And she even told me at one point that someone asked it, it said it sounded like a prayer. So Rhonda, before we get really kicked into that, can you give us a little bit of a background about your being a Christian and also how you became a poet?
I grew up going to Sunday school, but never understood really what the cross was all about or my own need for it. I think my takeaway from those years was Jesus loves you, so you better be good. And then in college, I decided I was too sophisticated to be a Christian and announced to myself, at least, if not the world in general, that I was an agnostic. And I think the Lord laughed and said, see how far you get. I transferred at the beginning of my junior year to the University of Colorado. And a friend had shared with me about becoming a Christian. And I said, nah, not interested, done with all that. And she said, well, you'll be on the Boulder campus this year. Call me if you ever want to go to church. Well, it was a huge school, and I was taking a heavy academic load and working. And by the end of 2 or 3 months, I was really lonesome. And I called her up. I thought, well, I can meet some people at church. Maybe I'll try that out. I called her up and said, could I ride to church with you? I don't think I'll go more than once because I don't think I'll like it. And she laughed and said, sure, pick you up. And she did. And the university class at First Presbyterian Church in Boulder, Colorado, kind of closed, they opened ranks, let me in, and closed ranks, and I never left. And I was there strictly for social at the beginning. I got invited to a Bible study, and again, only wanting something social, I went. And that it was an intervarsity Bible study on Romans, and I was a bit of a thorn in the leader's side sometimes, but he just kept teaching away. And then I went to a retreat that the university class had that spring, and again, the subject was Romans, and Romans 5:8 began to penetrate my brain and heart. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. I had no clue at that time how big a sinner I was, but I knew my life wasn't working particularly well. And it was clear that God had taken some initiative to relate to me. And within the next month or so, I said, okay, Lord, I really don't understand all this, but here I am. And I had been reading John Stott's book, Basic Christianity, and I copied the prayer in the back of that book into my notebook. And I guess that was my moment of commitment. There was absolutely no drama. But within about a month, I was noticing changes in myself that I knew that I wasn't making. And I realized God was doing something in response to my faith. I don't know that I even knew the words born again then, but that's what happened.
Wow.
So, and that was
Okay.
back in 1968. Few
I see.
years.
Very good. How did you meet your husband? How did that occur?
Well, we were both students at the university, and he also was starting to go to the same church. And I don't remember exactly when we met each other, but we knew enough about each other. I think my roommate and his roommate were dating. And I think each of us knew enough about the other that we would, meeting each other at church, we'd go, what are you doing here?
Right.
And then we ran into each other on campus one day, and he asked me out for a date. So that was kind of, we met sort of.
Right.
And then he invited me out.
And then you got married in what year, and where were you living then?
We were married in 1973. It took 5 years to get that all worked out. We dated, he went off to the Army. We broke up. I went to grad school. He came back from the Army. And eventually we got together again. And then we were married in 73. I was going to seminary in Denver. He was living in Boulder and finishing up his bachelor's degree at Colorado University. And when we got married, we lived in Boulder for the next 4 years, I guess, and moved down to the Denver area when our first child was born.
I see. then eventually you moved, and I know you're in Arizona now because that's where I am too. Just so everybody knows, I met Rhonda at an what they call an RTB science meeting. It's Christians that believe in God. Well, not sorry, scientists. Scientists that believe in God. And that's where Reasons to Believe. Hugh Ross is the main leader of that in California, but Ron and I belong to the local chapter of RTB, and it's right outside of ASU campus in Phoenix. So that's where I met her. And I actually helped her build her website, and now I help her publish a lot of her poems. I've been really amazed at some of the poems that she has been making. So without further ado, she wrote a blog kind of introducing the idea of being able to pray. Can you read a little bit of your blog and then how it morphed into being a prayer?
Well, let's
Can you
see.
do that for me?
I don't have it in front of me anymore. Hang
Okay,
on.
so I'll start reading it. It said, I read an article a while back and I can't find it now. I have no recollection of the source or author, which included some mention or discussion of Christian poets, and pointed out that Christian poets and should pray for poems back to God. Since many of my poems are actually prayers, that's a pretty easy thing for me to do. And it warms my heart that some of the readers of my poems tell me that is what they also do. I make no claim that my poems are inspired, but I trust that their emergence from my thought process is God directed. And I know that I want very much for the poem to be useful to him. And I have to say, they are godly inspired. And I read them and I'm like, wow, that sounds like a prayer. So can you expound upon that, what you wrote there?
Well, I guess it's just, I guess it's so automatic. That whatever I'm thinking about makes its way into a poem. And prayer is an area that I think the Lord has worked really hard to teach me about for many years now. I'm a slow learner.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't know what percentage of the poems in the book actually are prayers, but several of them are. And it is a source of great delight to me that several of the people who have read the book
Yeah, you wrote a book also, Rhonda. Do you have a copy of the book there with you somewhere?
yeah, I do.
Now you can go to her website, and there's a link there so you can order her book of poetry. You put your book up in front of the camera there so we can see it a second. And it's called I Weave a Song of Praise. And like I said, go to the website. You can find more podcasts that we have done in the past, but also a link to this her book. So I would ask you to do that. I think you will be blessed. And before, go ahead, you can take it down now.
Okay.
Before we started on a podcast here, we were talking about that. I was thinking about making a page on your website that they can download a PDF of some of your poems that they can use as prayers. So we're gonna think about this and do this in the next couple of weeks. To give an example about using, let's do the poem that you sent with just for this podcast, His Choice. Can you read that back to us? And everybody think about using this as a prayer. So go ahead and read that poem.
Well, let's see. I lost the, I'm so computer illiterate, and I don't know how to stay on here and get back into my files. And I lost it again on my phone. I had it a minute ago. Is there any chance?
Maybe
Can
it's
you
best yes.
Can you share the screen from the blog?
I'll try.
Let
Not
me
sure
give me
how
a
to-
minute here.
And I can always read it for you too. And it was called His
Why don't
Choice.
we do that? Mhm.
What?
Why don't we have
Go
you
ahead.
do that? Why don't
Okay.
you do that?
Okay. I'll do it in my best voice possible.
Okay.
Okay. Here it is. It's His choice. Death and alienation stamp our lives with loss. The fabrics of our heart is torn and ragged, rent with love lost, and sorrows born. And you, O Lord, chose this. Choose the distance from your father. Choose the family who cried, he's mad, we'll take him home. Choose wandering, choose the death. Incarnate, Lord, sharing our flesh, sharing our pain, sharing our loneliness. Repair the rents, weave the raveled fiber, heal the heart's wound, share of our flesh. Rhonda Brown. That's pretty interesting. Can you explain that poem a little bit and why it would make a great prayer?
Well, I think I am fascinated, I guess would be an appropriate word, by the incarnation. That God would become flesh just is incredible to me. That the second.
Hold on a second, Rhonda. It looks like you stopped. And so give us a second so we'll catch up. Sometimes this happens. And I just want everybody to know what's happening right here. There's a pause. Okay. Go ahead. Start again there, Rhonda.
Okay. I was thinking about the incarnation when I wrote the poem, and about Jesus' willingness to leave heaven and condescend to become a human being, to go through every stage of life that we go through, including prenatal. He grew in his mother's womb for 9 months, was born, grew through infancy and toddlerhood, childhood, teens, manhood. He went through all the stages that we go through and lived in a particular town in Israel, got to know the people around him. When the time was right, emerged and did about 3 years of very, very active ministry. But he chose all that. Nobody imposed it on him. He chose it. And that to me is just astonishing. And I guess finally, for that particular prayer, I'm reflecting on what he has done. And what can I say about that? But Lord, thank you. Thank you. That's what you've done for me. So,
Yeah, that's a very incredible story. I know we have heard it many, many times. But if you sit and really think about it deeply, what occurred, the creator of the universe and all these billions and billions of stars that are out there in our universe, and then all the life on our planet, and the billions of lives that live here, that God, the creator of the universe, would want to come and live with us. And it just, and then not only live with us, but then allowed human beings to beat him up and put him to death like he did. God could have stopped that at any point in time, but it would not have fulfilled his mission between him, God the Father, and the Holy Spirit. What had to be done was that he had to die for us so we could have a relationship with God forever and ever. And I think your poem really brought that out. You said in here, chose a family who cried. He's mad. We'll take him home. What did you mean by that exactly?
well, we don't get those exact words from the New Testament. And I don't want to take the time right now to hunt down the story. But in one of the Gospels, the writer tells us that Jesus was in a certain town, and he was that it was probably Capernaum, but I'm not sure. But there was a crowd gathered, and it was so crowded that you couldn't get into the house because the crowd was blocking. They were just surrounding the house. And his mother and brothers came, and they couldn't get through the crowd. So they evidently nudged someone and said, "We want to see Jesus. Tell him his family's here," and sent it telephone fashion where one person tells the next person, tells the next person, tells the next person, until someone actually spoke to Jesus in the house and said, "Your mother and brothers are outside and they want to talk to you." And he said, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?" And he said, he kind of waves his hand to the group around him. "You, those who believe in me, are my mother and brothers." And it doesn't say specifically the family said he's mad, but clearly we get other hints that his brothers were bewildered, certainly, by his ministry.
Yeah.
And weren't wholly supportive of it. So I extrapolated there a little bit.
Right. I think there's many places in, especially the New Testament, that it tells us a story, but we have to extrapolate what is going on.
I'm
know
not
with,
hearing you, John. Are we
Oh, you're not? I
disconnected
think you can.
again?
Yeah, give us a second here. I'll keep talking for a minute, and I can always tell when you come back on. There you go. Can you hear me now? Okay. I think there are many times in the New Testament when we read something, we have to extrapolate. Well, what could have been going on in the background, you know? I know the program The Chosen I just lost Rhonda. I'll find out what's going on here in a minute. But The Chosen was a program that gave us a pretty good idea of what occurred. I lost Rhonda, and I'm going to keep talking here because she will probably pop up back on here again, and then we'll be able to continue on. She also, I'm going to read what she wrote, and she said, "I have several canned prayers that I read to the." There she is. I was reading part of your blog here, the part that we didn't read yet. So I'm keeping everybody in line here. It says, "I have several canned prayers that I return to fairly regularly. I like the 3 necessary prayers that I found Elizabeth Goodig's book." Did I pronounce her? What is it?
Gooch.
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 The Scent of Water, Lord Have Mercy, Thee I Adore, Not My Will. And then also in a biography of Flannery O'Connor, I ran across a prayer for divine appointments that she used regularly, and I adapted it for my own use. And it read, "Let us toward those who are waiting for us. Lead us by the hand towards the ones we are looking for." And then you finished it up by saying O'Connor lived her last years as something of a recluse on a farm in Georgia, but enterprising readers who had made the effort to locate her frequently show up on her front porch. And she prayed for those appointments. It behooves us as well as to pray for the meetings God has for us. What do you mean by that? Meetings that God has for us?
Encounters might be a better word. The first time I even thought about divine appointments was many years ago, when my children were in early elementary school, I guess. I was a volunteer counselor at a crisis pregnancy center in Tempe. And I went in once a week for several hours, and they would have appointments on the books for me, and then the women who had made those appointments didn't show up. And I wasn't the only counselor that was happening to. And finally, the director said, "Pray for divine appointments. Pray for the people God wants you to connect with." And I started to do that. And I quit having no-shows, so that when I went in for my day, I actually got to talk to young women who were concerned that they might be pregnant when they didn't really want to be. And not only that, I found that in the next months, my appointments were very consistently with young girls around 15 or 16 years old. And they would have a negative test. And we never said, "You're not pregnant." We only said, "You have a negative test, so we think you're not pregnant." And I would have the opportunity then to say, "Let's talk about your lifestyle. You have a negative test today, but do you really want to go through this every month? Are you sure that you want to be sleeping with your boyfriend?" And we had a chance to talk about that a little bit. Now, I have no idea how many of them went away resolved to withdraw from that sexual relationship with whoever they were dating or involved with. I don't know. But we had a chance to talk about it and to introduce to them the idea that you don't have to go on doing this. And we had the opportunity to go into schools at that time. And one of the things that the representatives who went into schools were talking about a lot.
And Rhonda, can I interrupt you for a minute? Keep that thought. I have a sponsor thing that I have to read right now. And then she'll come back and finish the story. We have just started sponsoring with Stanley. And Stanley has been there for generations of adventures were built on invention, innovation, inspiration, and a timeless spirit that complements your wild imagination. For over 100 years, a steady stream of products continue to honor Stanley's legacy, keeping your warms warm and your colds cold. There are for all your adventures, so you can make the most of your world, whether you're scaling a mountain or climbing an elm in your own backyard. We will be with you on your journey as we have for generations past, helping to build a more sustainable, less disposable life, world of opening the door, awe-inspiring future. What's Stanley, what they do is they mostly sustainable products of the kind that never need to be thrown away or replaced. Stanley has created reusable, built for life products for over 100 years, reducing the demand for disposable products. You can find Stanley by just going on to Google, but we also have a link to their website, and then where you can order all kinds of cups and camping gear for food and all kinds of things. So check out our new sponsor, Stanley. Okay. Rhonda, can you finish up what you were saying here, please?
The folks who went into the schools, I never personally did that, but we had several people who were representing Price's Pregnancy Center regularly in the schools. And they focused often on the idea of secondary virginity, that you've made a decision to be sexually active. You don't have to continue doing that. You can make up your mind that I'm not doing that anymore now. I am going to wait until marriage for sexual activity. And in a sense, choose abstinence, but we were calling part of that decision the decision for secondary virginity. And they were having an impact with kids, and it was exciting.
Wow. And you said that was at Pregnancy Crisis Center here in Tempe.
Yeah, there's one now out in Apache Junction. I'm not sure. I haven't kept track of the particular organization that I volunteered with, and I don't know just what they are doing now. But there is, I believe it's the Hope Center for Women in Apache Junction, who are counseling women who are concerned that they may be pregnant. And
I bet you could write a whole lot of stories about your encounters with some of the women that you ran into there.
probably the very first poem that I wrote, when I didn't start writing poetry until I really started when I was in my 50s. The first poem I wrote, though, probably was begun sometime in my 40s. And it began as a monologue that I hoped to use in a pro-life Sunday at church. And it was in the persona of a woman who had had an abortion and who was finding emotional and spiritual healing in knowing Jesus. Now, that kind of Sunday never happened. I never used it as a monologue, but for some reason, it took about 10 years, I think, to write that poem. And it morphed from monologue into a poem. And
Do you have that? Do you have that in front of you?
no, but
Okay.
it is on my website.
Oh, okay. It's on the website.
If it's on
Um,
the website, the link to it is on the website.
okay. What was the name of the poem?
What was it? I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember.
Don't worry about it. Well, they can do a little research.
Mhm.
I know when you're talking about this thing about abortion, it is a subject matter that drives close to my wife and my past. My wife had an abortion at one time, and I actually supported and paid for a couple abortions. But at the time, neither one of us were Christian. When I became a Christian, I had to go back and revisit that and ask God's forgiveness for destroying this life. So it rings very, very close to my heart and my wife's heart about what we did and thinking about that. And since then, we have seen many videos on abortion and what occurs in abortion. And my grandson, who just had a baby here about a week ago, and he's our great grandchild, he showed me that day what occurs when the sperm enters the egg. And there is a flash of light. It appears that the spark of life, when life first starts, there's almost like quiet explosion of light that occurs, and that just blew me away. They actually videoed that occurrence, and I was like, if I wasn't convicted before, that really convicted my heart. That there was a God in this universe, an intelligent designer that was bringing life into this universe, that this flash of light would occur. And I'm sure there's all kinds of mathematical stuff and scientific things that say why this occurs. But if you look at it, it's just like, oh my God, how could I be so foolish? Because I was an atheist until I was 30 years old. And when I became a Christian, a born again Christian, it's a long story. But I would have arguments with the best of them against Christianity. And I would go to my local college at that time, and I would hear a debate between an atheist scientist and a Christian, probably a pastor of some sort. And I would always root for the atheist. And yeah, how are they going to overcome this argument? But now that I become born again and I've been part of RTB, I have a lot of answers now for the Christian perspective, and just dealing with abortion itself and killing human beings, innocent human beings. And this was really driven home to me with my grandson and my daughter, or my great daughter-in-law, and having this new baby coming into the life. So I just wanted to add that to what you were saying there, Rhonda,
Mhm.
that God has done amazing. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
I finally remembered the title of the poem.
Oh, okay.
It's called Choosing Points.
Choosing points.
Mhm. It emphasizes choice, that we make a choice.
And that's on the website, right?
It either is on the website or the link to it is on the website. I'm not absolutely sure which.
I'm going to go in and track down. Go ahead and talk about some other talking points that you wanted to get across, and I'll look for it.
I think I really didn't finish my sentence about divine appointments. I told the story about the director at Crisis Pregnancy Center telling us to pray for divine appointments. And the result, as I said, was that I quit having no-shows and I started having the same kind of client week after week. But I learned about looking to the Lord to let him direct the people I encounter in my life. And the prayer, the prayer that Flannery O'Connor used is just, and I didn't know that prayer at that time. I only discovered it years later. But it is so on target. Lord, lead us to those we are waiting for. Well, we're waiting for the people that we can tell about Jesus, people whose lives we might be able to have an impact on. And then it's lead us toward those we are waiting for, those who are waiting for us. We don't know, and they won't know they're waiting for us, probably. But God brings people together in unique circumstances and creates connections. And that is a delight to me. And when I remember, I ask him for that. And definitely, and sometimes there are circumstances where I know what kind of person I'm waiting for. And I ask very specifically for that kind of person.
Okay.
Know who it is. But the whole idea of divine appointments is, well, going back to the Bible, we're told about the Ethiopian eunuch who was riding along in his chariot somewhere in Israel. And the disciple Philip is coming up close to the chariot, and he hears the Ethiopian reading aloud from a scroll of Isaiah. I think maybe Isaiah 53. And Philip says, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And the Ethiopian says, "Well, I don't have anybody around to explain it to me. How can I?" So Philip, who has not that long before spent 40 days with the risen Christ, soaking up Jesus' teaching. And I'm sure that teaching included explaining to his disciples the way that Isaiah 53 was pointing to Jesus.
That's
and
right.
Was able to say to the Ethiopian eunuch, "Let me explain it to you."
A right person to do that.
And that was a divine appointment.
Yeah.
No question about it.
I've had a couple divine appointments in my life, and I think we all have. When a certain situation comes together and you think back on it and say, oh, this could only be from God. How did that occur? So yeah, I was looking for the chosen point, but I can't find it. But I also found on here on the blog, Prayer on My Mind. And that's a very good poem and everything on here too, that's on your blog. So I would, maybe you could, since we don't have it on the website at this point, and then also divine appointment, maybe you could send me those over and I can get those published onto the blog itself. Does that sound like something that we could do? And we could.
Possible. No, I don't have the poem on divine appointments. It's just that little prayer that I found in O'Connor's biography.
Yeah, that's even got me thinking about the divine appointment that occurred with me and a stranger right after I became a Christian up in Oregon. And I think about that occurrence on a regular basis. I actually did a post on it, having to do with the spark plug in my Volkswagen. But that was a divine appointment. That was something that was put together many years ahead. And then all of a sudden I ran into this young kid that was going to commit suicide. And he asked God, if you're real, can you prove it to me? And then lo and behold, I showed up with my car backfiring and a spark plug missing from the engine. So anyways, I'll get into that at some point, but I know that was a divine. Anyways, you did a blog that was a prayer on my mind. And here's a prayer that you wrote at the back end of it. I lean in to you, O God, sometimes in petition, always in praise. You are the solidarity undergirding every thought. Without you, there is nothing. I live my days aware of you, turning to you, the ease of breathing, soil beneath my feet, food in my mouth, stir thankfulness to you, creator of all, and the gladness of redemption. Sin forgiven, debts erased. At the terrible cross and cost, I lean in, oh God, in awe and gratitude, and always in praise. That was a wonderful, wonderful prayer that we could say. We have in our living room, we have a big sign that says, thankful, thankful, thankful. And I think I don't do it enough. My wife and I talked about this because we felt like we don't do it enough. But we're not grateful enough for things that God has done in our past. It seems like things have gone on in the past and they're in the past and we don't think about them enough. And there are miracles in there. And I want to always keep remembering being thankful for these things in my life. It's like I'm catching up for the 30 years that I was an atheist, that I wasn't thankful for anything. How arrogant is that? I was an arrogant fool in those first 30 years of my life. But I hope I'm making up time for that. So we still have about 11 minutes here. Where else would you like to go with our conversation today?
Well, the whole thing of thankfulness just reminds me, the pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Boulder, where Bill and I both became Christians, where we were married, and where I ended up working for about 4 years. Dr. Bob was a joyful, thankful man. And he spoke often of the need to have what he called an attitude of gratitude. And working in the church for 4 years, having very regular contact with him, I think it influenced my attitude. And I think that quite early in my Christian life, it became very natural to have an attitude of thankfulness. And I'm grateful for that. That God taught me fairly early to be thankful, and brought many believers in Jesus into my life who modeled that. Dr. Bob himself modeled that. Other good friends in the church modeled it. So there was a certain contagion in people with
I like
that.
that word, contagion. Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that. And I need to write some more things about thankfulness. I really haven't written that much about being thankful. And
Yeah.
I think I need to
it's-
focus on that a little more.
I did and I think maybe you remember this from about a year and a half ago. I sent out an email or something to everybody. What are you thankful for? And then everybody came back, and I did a blog post about being thankful from all these other people's perspectives. And I thought I got something back from you about that, but it is something I think we have to remind ourselves over and over with things that are going on in our lives very quickly, that we forget to be thankful for what God has done for us. It's like we think He's always going to be there, and He is some kind of an entity that has got a stone face. But this is a living, and I don't know if you call it breathing, but He is a living God. And He would like to hear from us from time to time. And I so want to be thankful. I want to thankful for all the things, good and bad, that has occurred into my life. And many bad things that I let happen, but how God has bailed me out from my bad decisions so many times, and from the words that flow out of my mouth at times. But I want to be grateful that He has forgiven me, and that He is on my side, and that He loves me. These are things that we have to remind ourselves, that God of the universe loves each and every one of us separately and individually. And we have to remember that. That would be good to talk about gratefulness. I also wrote a blog. You go to my website, and it's called What Makes an Atheist? And I think that would be real eye-opening for a lot of people, because I come from that background. Why did I become an atheist, and then why did I become a Christian after that at 30 years old? And I think it's a lot of people can relate to the story. I think a lot of people become nasty atheists because something has happened to them in their childhood or even adult years, and they were part of a church at one time, and something terrible happened, and it happened to me, and that's why I turned my back on God. But God is He's a redeemer. He redeems our soul and our spirit, and because that happened, my whole family became Christian too. After my wife and I divorced, and I went into Oregon, and I came back as a born-again Christian, and many people couldn't believe it. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Rhonda, no matter how many times you Indian wrestle me. Well, next month, could you do something on thankfulness? Or do you have something else in mind that you're thinking about?
Well, as I said, I don't think I've written much of anything about thankfulness. But I was thinking one of the first poems I wrote that was a prayer is titled Cross Cure. And we have belonged for years to small groups within our church. We've changed churches a couple of times, and so we've been in different small groups. But a consistent piece of our small group meetings has been the sharing of prayer requests so that we know how to pray for each other. And every time we go through our lists, I think of this poem. As I said, it's called Cross Cure, and the title will make sense, I think, by the end of the poem.
Okay, that's not in your website. I was just looking for it.
It's in the book.
Oh, it's in the book.
Mhm.
Could you send me that one also so I can put it up on the website?
Possibly, we can talk about that, but let me read it. Here
Okay.
at your feet, we tumble this basket of brokenness, this chaos of hearts crushed and bleeding, of bodies aching and lame. Sin takes its heavy toll and leaves us speechless. We have no defense. Healer, Redeemer, we are helpless. There is no cure but blood and nails. Make us whole, we plead, and touch our wounds with balm. It's the cross, the blood and nails, that is the cure for all of it.
Oh, that's right. You do a much better job of reading your poems than I do.
But I'm
You just do.
hear someone else read them too. I like that.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it, but you just are, you know when to reflect, you know when to pause, and you know when to give emphasis. Send me that prayer, okay, or that poem, and I'll just post, unless you want to write, and we can talk about that poem in detail on the next podcast if you wish. Again, I want to tell everybody, you can find Rhonda, her book of poetry, right under her name is her website. Please go to that, and there'll be that and much more information. You can find the link to the book and then go to the blogs, and you can see a lot of other things. And then you can also go to her podcast and listen to some of the past podcasts that we have done. And it will be really beneficial. She is a wealth of information and blessings, and I am very glad that she is in my life. I do a lot of podcasts with scientists and all kinds of people in the professional world, and I just thought it would be wonderful to have Rhonda, a poet, on our group, on our podcast. So, Rhonda, I'm going to close this off here. Thank you for being with us again. And I can't wait to look for next month. And that's going to be in October. Can you believe it's going to be October? We are in the middle of September. It's going to be Christmas before you know it.
Really cool. It was good to be with you today, John. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody who is here with us. Our next episode of Jaws Christ Talk special will be aired on October when Rhonda will be back with us. Be sure to subscribe to our channel or page wherever you found us and check out our website to find out more about this and other shows. Until next time, we wish you a productive and enjoyable week. See you next month, Rhonda.
Okay.